This episode sponsored by Lake Monster Details, producing the Don's Light and Magic Legacy line of parts, offering upgrade parts and decals for accuracy, special effects, and lighting. Visit www.lakemonsterdetails.com and make it glow. Also sponsored by GCals, producing aftermarket replacement decals and custom quality graphics for your favorite spaceships. Visit www.gcals.company.site and add some personalization to your sci-fi models today. Also sponsored by Mask Design, boldly going where no masking kit has gone before. Take your model to the next level of detail and accuracy with a masking kit from Mask Design. Visit Mask Design on Facebook or click the ordering link in the notes below the video. Also sponsored by Paragrafix. Add superior detail and accuracy to your models with photo etch, resin, and multimedia accessories from your first source for photo etch parts and more. Paragrafix. They count rivets so you don't have to. Visit Paragrafix at www.paragrafix.biz or click the link in the notes below this video. Hey fellow model heads, Will here. Welcome to the Ensign's Chair. Welcome to my build studio, or as the wife likes to call it, the shed. But right now it's more of a sweat lodge because my air conditioner went out and I had to order a part for it, and the part won't be until tomorrow. So I just got a fan going. Fortunately, it hasn't been too hot here in Virginia lately. It's been kind of on the cool side. But it's been raining a lot and the humidity level is high, and it's not the best feeling in here, and it's not the best thing for my models. I'm not too worried about the kits in the boxes. As long as they're not exposed to heat, they're fine. But the ones that I've built, I don't like it being real humid in here. So hopefully that part will get in tomorrow like it's supposed to, and I can get that air conditioner fixed and back up and running. But anyway, you're here for the models. So this episode, we're going to get back into finishing up the Reliant hull. You can see it over my shoulder here. We'll pretty much get that closed up. We'll do a light test running the Arduino code and see how that looks. And then we're going to move on to doing the roll bar, is what I call it. I know a lot of other people call it too, but the roll bar with the weapons pod. You see I've got that wired up. I've got the lighting installed in this. We're going to take a look at how I wired this up and also what the Arduino code looks like running on this. So without further ado, give me a minute. I'll put you on the bench. We'll get to work. All right, so here we are. Everything is wired up. Well, I've got one thing left to wire, and that's the RCS thrusters. I got to wire those in. Those will actually wire in along with the amber LED and the impulse engines. Those will be on at impulse, and then they'll go off along with the impulse engines when I go to warp, and then this will turn blue. I don't have a switch hooked up right now, so when this cuts on, you're going to see the crystal kind of alternate, and which is great because it gives me kind of a running test to make sure this is switching properly between the sequences. So I've got a Darlington array, a little microchip set up here that is basically going to allow my lights, internal lights, to cut on in sequence like I wanted them to. So we're going to take a look at that. So give me a second. Let me cut this light off. It might get a little dark. Hopefully not too dark. See if the camera needs it just a little bit. Yeah. We're going to plug this in and see if it'll show up on camera. without too much trouble. If I can find my plug. Here we go. All right, so there we go. We're going to start seeing things light up. The back lights up first, and then you can kind of see it's lighting up all the way around. The front's going to light up. There go my windows in the front, and then the bridge. And there we go. There's the lighting sequence. You can see that crystal in the back is alternating. Oops, I must have hit my wire for my... I don't have these soldered in yet, the connections, because they're just kind of stuck into the Arduino right now. So I got to be careful when I move this around that I don't change any of the wires, otherwise I lose the connection. But we could see that that impulse as it changes from orange to blue. The whoop, I got to do a little. Well, no, that's because I don't have this glued down yet. But you can see that changes. You can see my corner vents light up blue, and then they go out when it switches back and the impulse cuts on. And we'll let that do it again. You see that blue pop up on the corner. And let's check this corner out too. Yep, on that corner as well. And you'll see it goes out. Impulse cuts in. Just the way I wanted it to do. So that's working out great. You see that back is lit up great. And yeah, so I think we're ready to just about seal this up. I still have to run. You can see the lower lights as well. And there's my my front. You can see those two red lights are lit on the front on the lower dome there. Yeah, looks pretty good. So I think we're just about ready to seal this up. I've got to I do have to drill holes in the sides where the pylons are going to be, and then I've got to run 4 wires. I've got to have a strobe for the end of the nacelles. I've got to have a wire for the warp chiller grills. I've got to have a static on light which will cut on with one of these groupings. I've got to figure out. I got to decide which one. A static that'll cut on those spotlights, those inside spotlights that kind of shine inward on the front of the nacelles. The front of each nacelle has 2 spotlights that just kind of shine in. So I've got to have a static wire for that. That's 3. And then I've got to have a 4th wire because I will have photon torpedoes on this, which that's going to need to run up to the weapons pod on the roll bar up top here. So I've got to have 4 wires. I think that's everything. Roll bar. I've got to have, like I said, I've got to have the strobe light. I've got to have the 2 strobe. There's 2 strobes on the end of the cell, and there's also a strobe on top of the weapons pod that that has to work. So yeah, 4 wires I've got to run. Now I've still got 2 wires that I've got to run out the bottom here, and you can see it's getting kind of tight here. So I'm probably going to have to open this hole up more. What I might do is come up with a 3D printed part, make the hole bigger, and have a 3D printed part that will kind of glue in place here. That'll allow me to use a bigger rod, and will give me a good mounting point for this. This model is not going to be heavy, so I don't have to worry too much about a lot of weight. But oh, I got to check my strobe is not. Oh, that's because all my strobes stopped because I'm fidgeting with the wires again. There we go. Now you can see that bottom is. Oh, I keep moving it too much. You see that bottom is strobing, and I do have to make a adjustment to the timing on the nav lights. I'm not happy with. I don't know why they seem to go off and then come right back on. They should go off and then come back on. There should be a bit of a pause there, more of a pause before that that comes back on. So I'm going to go into the Arduino code, and I'm going to change that setting. It's real easy to change. I'm going to put a link for Ostrich Longneck's videos. That's the board. That's what I'm using here. Is his Trevor is his name, but he goes by Ostrich Longneck on YouTube. But that's his board. His Arduino program and wiring setup is what I'm using for this. The only thing I did was that is meant for the refit, and I took the light up sequence, the startup sequence, where you see the lights coming on the different parts. There's different spotlights coming on. I just changed that and wired it to my internal lighting, so that way I get that kind of staggered lighting effect coming on, which I'm really happy with. I really like that. I am going to cut down these reds. I'm going to add another, probably another, I might just go ahead and try a 1000 ohm, where these two come together I'll put in a 1000 ohm, and that'll cut these down some because I think these are just too bright on either side of this. So I'm going to cut these two lights down a little bit more, add a little more of a resistor on it. And other than that, though, everything is looking pretty good. So like I said, just got to drill some holes, run my wires that I know I'm going to need, and then I'll be ready to get this sealed up. So give me a little bit, and we'll come back. All right, guys, I pretty much got this ready to seal up, but I'm not sealing this up yet because I want to be able to do a light test on everything before I seal this up, because if I go and I have a problem with, say, the warp chiller grill effect, then I've sealed this up and I've kind of put myself in the tight spot having to crack it back open. So I'm not going to seal this up until I get the other sub-assemblies done and wired up and do a full light test, and then we'll seal this up. But what I've got going on here, I'll explain to you. I'm not zoomed in, so you might not be able to see it too well, but I'll tell you what I've got. So out this one side, I've tried to run these wire colors, and that's the thing about having the ribbon cable with the rainbow colors, because I can color code my wires and be able to pretty easily tell by looking at it what each wire is for. So now in Trevor's sketch, in his wiring diagram, he's got 2 red wires for the photon effect. And he's got 2 of them because you've got alternating photon firing effects. But since I've already got a red 12-volt positive coming off there, I don't want to get that confused. So I've got 2 purple wires running out of here, and that will be for my photon firing effect. So I've got those running out here. I've got a red and a black, which is a 12-volt positive, and of course the black is negative. Now this 12-volt positive is running off of my Darlington array, and it's controlled by when these 2 front windows come on, it's going to charge this line, and then my those inward facing spotlights on the nacelles are going to cut on. So you're going to see that cut on, and also, you know what, I may have to run one more wire because I've got thrusters on here that are going to have to light up along with the thrusters on here, which I didn't think about, which is why I'm going over this. So I'm going to have to run one more wire out here, which it's already a crowded assembly, but I think I've got room for it. So to move on, so I'll run a yellow line out here on each side for that fly. But then I've also got a blue on each side for the warp chiller grill effect. Now we've got to install these MOSFETs. I could have installed it in the middle here and just run blue, but either way I'm going to have to run blue wires off. So what I'm going to do is probably install the MOSFET in each nacelle itself and control it that way, versus just having one MOSFET running both. I'll give each nacelle its own MOSFET. And excuse me, what that's going to do is allow me to run 12-volt LEDs but control it with the 5-volt signal off of this blue wire. So that's what those are going to be for, and we'll look at those more when we get to that point. So I've got that blue wire, and then I've got a white wire, and that is my strobe light for the end of each nacelle. And then on this left side, I've got an orange wire coming out. That's going to be for the phasers. So I've got that set up as well. And the phasers, of course, are going to be, I'm going to run the phasers. No, I'm not going to use any of these phasers here to light. I'm going to use those, I think they're supposed to be mega phasers that you see. Those are the ones you see fire that damage the Enterprise when you see that in Star Trek 2. So those are the ones I'm going to have run off of this. I'm not going to use these phasers at all. But so I've got all the wiring set up for that. Again, like I said, I've got to run one more yellow wire for the RCS thrusters, and that'll just run off of the wire that's controlling the RCS thrusters up here. But once I get that wire run, we'll have all the wiring running out here, and we'll be ready to go as far as doing the light test once I get the other sub-assemblies done. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to set this aside here just a little bit. But I'm going to start working on the roll bar / weapons pod. And not a whole lot of modifications I'm seeing that I'm going to do to this. Is it perfect? No. But it's a lot better than some of the other discrepancies I've seen. For example, on the top of the weapons pod, you do have that one, I think it's kind of a deflector sensor up here. Let me focus this a little bit. Oh, too much. You can see that on the front here. Now it's funny they did it on this part, But on the bottom, on the front here, they just made them flat pieces. They didn't add that raised detail, but they do have it on here. So is it perfect? No, but it's good enough that I'm willing to just accept it and deal with it, mainly because I don't want to have to deal with making a mod for that, and I don't really think it's terribly necessary. I could change my mind on that at some point, but right now I'm thinking I'm just going to leave that alone. So there's that detail is fine. There are some other, I got a fly in here. My air conditioner went out, so now I've got to keep my door open to keep it cool in here until I get the replacement part for my air conditioner. And I got flies coming in every once in a while that are really grating my nerves. But I digress. So now there is one modification we need to make, and that is on the underside here. You have, they're just recessed areas here, but on the studio model, these boxes, this one here and this one on this side, are actually openings. They're lighted openings and they're vented. They have detail kind of like the warp nacelles where it's grated. You have grates on here that the light shines through. So I'm going to have to do some of that. There's no photo etch part for this in the Paragrafix kit, so I'm going to have to come up with something for that. But I'll figure something out for that and get that. The main thing is it's going to have to be opened up because this needs to be lighted. There should be lights here on either side. I think they're either red lights or they could be white lights that just appear red on film. So I'll look at that and figure out what I want to do with that. So that's one modification that's got to be done right there. The other modification I'm looking at is on the ends here. There are supposed to be phaser banks here, and that's what these humps are supposed to be. They're not terrible, but I think I can squeeze a little more detail in there with a printed part. So I'm going to make a 3D printed part. I'll just sand this off, Dremel it off, and then sand it smooth. And I'm going to come up with a 3D part that has a little more detail. Let me show you what that looks like on the studio model. You'll see in this picture there's a little more detail on there than what's on the kit part. And I think I can squeeze a little more of that detail into that part. So I'm going to do that. You can see that the yellow, what may be looked at as kind of reminiscent to phaser banks. The yellow with the red outline, it's just a painted on detail on the studio model. There's no actual hump there for the phaser itself. So I'm not sure if those are supposed to be phasers and they just painted that detail and that's the way they left it, or if those are supposed to be for something else. But you do have what looks like two phaser banks where that blue area is, and that's what I'm going to focus on doing a 3D printed part on to add a little more detail to this. Like I said, the kit part's not terrible. It's just lacking some detail that I think we can add to it. Plus, making that a part that goes on will make it easy to cover up. You've got this seam here, so instead of having to get these parts together and then sand that seam there, this part will just cover that seam and easy done. So those are the two things I'm mainly looking at. Not looking to make any major modifications. I don't think the shape here is too bad, and these aren't bad at all, although I think on the studio model these have some texture, but again, I'm not gonna go into that too much, not at this scale. So those are the two main modifications I'm looking at doing to this part. So I'm gonna work on doing that. I'm gonna work on getting my lighting together. I'll get this together, and well, let me talk about this too while I've got these sitting here. These parts here, the front and the back where your photons are, again, not perfect, but not horrible either on detail considering compared to the studio model. So again, I'm not really worried about making any changes to that as well. Like I said, mainly want to focus on just those two areas, getting those done, and then we will move on from there to the nacelles. So give me a little bit to work on that stuff, and we'll come back and see what I come up with. All right, so I've made some progress here, a little bit of progress. I kind of want to show you, if you haven't built one of these 1537 lines before, if you're going to light it, there's some things, especially with the roll bar itself and the weapons pod. To get the weapons pod lit up, you got to do some work. You got to make some passageways. So let's start from the bottom up. So with the from the bottom where the nacelle hooks, you've got to make a hole. So you got to drill an opening there. And let me focus this because I'm gonna have a couple things I got to show close up. But you see there, I've drilled a hole there. I got to clean it up a little bit still. It's a little rough in there, but you get the idea. That's you got to make a hole there for your wires to run through. I may have to make that a little bit bigger. We've got a couple wires that have to go down there. So I've got the strobe. I've got the blue wire for the nacelle, and we need a positive and negative. So we got 4 wires I got to run through here. I might have to make it a little bit bigger, but it's a start. Then from that, you also have to make a hole in the top here. And on this piece here, you've got to take away a little bit of material here to open this up more. That way it doesn't block this hole when you put this in place. So that way you've got, I don't know why it seems like the camera's always so everything white so bright on here. But so that way you got your wires can run up here and then run up through this hole, and then from here they'll run into the hull of the ship. Now also, if you want to do Raytheon lighting for that those registries on the side, and I think there's one on the inside too. There's enough room here, just enough room to stick an SMD, and that's how I did on my previous build. I'm not going to do it on this build, but you can light that way if you want to do Raytheon on that. But so that gives you your connection from the hull down to the nacelle. Now to get up to the roll bar, you've got a couple things you've got to do. You have to, I've got this part kind of put together. You've got to take out quite a bit of material. Right in here. You can see there where I've dremeled that out. I've taken out a bit of material. Not a lot, but you got to take out enough to at least run, let's see, we've got to run 3 wires each side. So on one side I will run a positive and negative, and the orange wire that's going to control the phasers. And then on the other side I will run the 2 purple wires, which are going to run the photon effect, and the white wire for the strobe. So I'll run 3 wires of each side. So that's why I've done it to both. Excuse me. That's why I've done it to both sides. But once you get this opening here, you then have to trench, make a trench on this side and on the where's it at? Oh, and on the opposite side here. And you've got to do it on both sides because you really can't take off enough material on one side to allow enough room for the wires to run. You need enough room for 3 wrapping wires. You can't fit 3 of the normal size wires through there, but you can fit a bundle of 3 of the wrapping wire, the wire wrapping wire that I use. And I wish I had one more color of this. I may have to order another color just so I have it in the future. But running those 3 wires up, now I'm going to have to color code these. What I'll do is I may dip these in paint just on the ends to mark them so that I know which wires are which color as far as what effect they go. Orange for the phasers, red for the photons, and on the other one, I don't have a white one either. So white would be another good color to have for this. I'll probably see if I can order some of this wire wrapping wire, see if they have it in white, because that would be a lot easier to color code too. I could just dip it in some paint, and then because it's white, it would just take on whatever color I dip it in. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. I gotta see. I'm pretty sure this comes in a couple different colors, so I'm gonna have to take a look at that. But I can't fit the rainbow ribbon wire that I have. It's too thick to fit 3 strands through. But this is a strand of 3 of the wrapping wire, so I could fit that side, and then I'll fit another 3 up this side, and that'll be all the wires I need to connect everything in here. The photons, the strobe, which sits on top, and then the actually on the one side the phasers, or the phasers, they only have to go up this far if I'm just going to light here. So I need to switch that around because I don't need 2 purple wires running up this side, because then I'd have to run it over to the other side to use for the phasers. So actually, I'm sorry, the orange is the phasers, so I need to run another orange wire over here so that way I can just wire up the phasers down here, and then I only have to run 2 wires on one side instead of 3. So I didn't think about that. Things you think about when you start going through stuff and kind of working it out. So I'll have to make a change to that as far as my wiring. But you can see that strand of 3. It just barely fits in there, so it's just enough room to fit in there. On the top, in order to do your strobe, you've got to drill a hole, and your hole, the strobe should be between this mechanical pit area, I guess you could call it, and this panel line. It should be right in between that, right in the center. So I've got that drilled, ready for the strobe to be put in place. And then what I did on this this opening part here, I cut that open, and then I went and used my let me focus this a little bit. Used my files to kind of open it up just a little bit more. I still got to do some more putty work around it, but you can see, and I broke this lens, so I'm reprinting this lens. I'm going to have to pop this out and pop a new one in. I broke the one fin on the end here, so you can see that's not quite the same as the other side. So I've got that reprinting, and I'll get that in place. And that's because I was pushing a little too hard before I had the hole open enough. But once I get those in place, I'll put a little more putty. I'm just using the slurry mix that I keep laying around, and that way it gets in there, and I can just come in with a Q-tip, clean it up instead of having to do a lot of sanding. My plan is to paint this black, light block the whole thing, and then come over it with some sandpaper on the outside and lightly sand the top of the fins, so that'll open that up for lighting. And I don't know if this will show, let's see, but you can see how that light comes through these. So once I get those in between the fins filled in, that should look pretty good. And I still got to decide whether I'm going to light those red or just use a white light, but we'll see. I'll figure that out. So that's what I'm doing with that, and I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I did do a 3D printed replacement for that photon bank. Let's see if I can focus this better. You can see it right there. You can see some of the detail I added to that. And I've still got to do some more putty work on this. I've got that slurry on there that's dry, and there's a couple holes that's appeared, so I'll go back over it with some more and fill it in some more. And then once I get it filled in satisfactorily, I'll come over that with a Q-tip and clean it up. But you can see, you can see some of the detail I added to that part. It's not just 2 humps anymore. Now it actually looks like actual phaser banks. So I'm happy with that part. And like I mentioned, I did a clear 3D insert for these openings, which like I said, I've got to remove that one, and I've got to do some more putty work around this. You can see where that slurry is kind of seeped in there, and it'll fill in some, and I'll put some more in it, and eventually it'll fill it all out. And like I said, I'll just come over with a Q-tip and clean that up, and it'll be good to go. And the other thing that we have to do if we're going to light this is we've got to drill holes for our photon openings. Now that looks kind of like I took out a chunk there, but that'll get filled in actually with some UV resin, and there's a little bit of a lip around that. It's not really, you can't really see it on camera, but it'll fill in, and I'll use some UV resin, and it'll look good once I get that done. But I've got these drilled open. I've got these opened up so that a 3mm LED will just stick right in the back there. It just fits into place now. And then all I've got to do is find my battery. All I got to do is get that wired up, and you can see how that's going to light up. So that'll work out just great. But that's where I'm at on this right now. I am going to get a little bit more work done on this. I've got I want to try to get these parts painted up and get them in place and get ready to get the lights in place and then get them glued to the top part of the housing. That way this is ready to go in place here once I get all the wiring done. But oh, I'm out of focus. Look at that. But yeah, I want to get these painted the correct color. I've got the paints that Gary recommends to use for the kind of bluish color for these. So I've got that. I think this also gets painted. These lenses also get painted the same bluish color. But I got to look at that and make sure. I think it's the same blue though that gets used for these. I'll have to double check the studio model photos. But anyway, that's where I'm at. I've got this light block. I'm not worried about painting white reflection in it because this doesn't need to be brightly lit, these lenses. And everything else is going to be light box on its own anyway, in a way. So don't have to worry about doing a reflective coat on the inside. It just needs to be light blocked. So that's where I'm at. I'm going to do some more work on this and get a little more done on this, and then we'll call it a day with this episode because I want to try to keep these episodes a little shorter than what they've been going. So give me a little bit. I'm going to do some more work on this, and we'll come back and take one more look. All right, so I've got the weapons pod all wired up and ready to go. I've got the wires actually secured on this side of the wing of the roll bar. And I've got 2 wires I've got to secure yet, but I want to open this up and show you what I did here. But you can see that strobe right here. That's working. And I actually, you probably can't tell just from this, but I did go in and fix the timing on the board. As it comes from Trevor, the timing is a little fast for me. He may have timed it to, he probably timed it to the motion picture, which the timing on the refit on the motion picture is a little faster than in Star Trek II and thereafter. They changed the time a little bit on the strobing. It's a little bit slowed down. So I have slowed this down to match what I saw on screen for the Reliant in Star Trek II. I just watched videos and then would work on the timing and adjust it as I watched the clips from the movie, and got the timing down pretty accurate, if not exact. It's pretty darn close, and it's good enough for me. So you can see that strobe going. You can also see the photon effect firing off. It fires one side then the other. It also does this on the back side. I'm not going to flip it around because right now this wiring is just kind of stuck in place. If I move it, it's probably going to cut off. But you can see how that's just going back and forth because I don't have a switch on there to control the firing yet. But once I hook up a switch, the switch will keep that from firing unless the button is pressed. But right now it's just going to keep going back and forth. But let me see if I can move this without losing any connections. But there you go. You can see how that photon effect is going to fire off there. See if we can flip it around for the back without losing the connection. Nope, just lost the ground. So yeah, but you saw how that was going. That's just I just want to do a quick test on it. Let me unplug my Arduino here. A quick test on it before I sealed it up. And we can see that the code is working great. The wiring is where it needs to be. But what I did here, let me disconnect this because I just had these wires on here temporarily to lengthen this a little bit. But what I've got here is, you can see I've got these are all my I've got 4 3mm LEDs in here, one for each torpedo tube. I've got those all wired together. All my negatives are wired together along with the negative from the strobe. So those are all the negatives are wired together, and then my positives just go in. I've got the front and the back same side tubes wired together in the front and on the left and right. So that way, front and back, it's alternating. So I've got one hooked up for the left bank, one hooked up for the right. That's why there's 2 purple wires, because there's 2 separate circuits so that it alternates firing torpedoes. So that's how I've got that wired up. And then I've just got, like I said, this is supposed to be a white wire, but I ran out of white. So I've got this yellow wire in here for my positive for my strobe. So those are only 4 wires I needed, was these 2 for the each of the photon torpedo sides, my negative, and the positive for the strobe. That's all that has to run up the pylons. So I've got these gouged out enough just to fit the wiring in. So I can put this together now and get this pretty much sealed up. You can see I've got the blue painted, but it really doesn't matter if you paint it now, because it's really easy to paint this. Because when you go to paint this, I'm actually going to have to paint the inside edges of the housing. Actually gets painted the same color as the face plates here. So those are all going to have to get painted again anyway. But I wanted to mainly get these painted up so I can do either I may use UV resin, or I might just use some microcrystal clear and fill these holes in. And then that way it'll bring the light a little more out to the edges. So I've got that ready to go. So I'm ready to seal this up. And basically all I got to do, you can see I've got, excuse me, I've got this one side already glued in place. And what that's going to let me do is just take this piece, and it's going to glue in place. and you see it'll sit right down on there once I get it glued in. So that way there's no bulge there or anything because of the wires being too thick. So I've got that, and then once I get that in place, I can glue on my pylon. So I get that glued in place. But I'm going to go ahead and get that done, get all of this kind of glued together, and we'll be ready to kind of look at working this in with the warp nacelles, which we're going to work on next episode. So make sure you tune in for that bit. But this is all going to be good to go. I don't think I really need to show you step by step how to put these pylons together. I will say that it is easier because I did this two different ways. I did this trying to get the angle right on this, but what I found was it's better just to glue this piece in place first, and then that way your pylons will just sit on top and just fill in that gap you've got there. I think that's easier to do than the other way around. So other than that though, I'll get these together. These will be done, ready to go. I'll go ahead and do the putty work and everything. Next episode we'll come back. We're going to focus on getting those nacelles done so we can do our final light test on the nacelles, the weapons pod, everything hooked up to the Arduino with switches. Make sure everything works, and then we'll be ready to start sealing up the saucer and get that all start painting. Hopefully, not next episode, but the episode after that, we should be starting on the painting. Hopefully. All right, guys. So. One quick correction here. I was about to wrap this video up, and I actually recorded wrapping it up, but I did have one correction to make. So I did need to run a separate positive wire, and the reason for that is because I almost forgot I had to put in a red LED to light these lower vent openings. Now I've got these vent openings lighting up, but I went back and looked at some screenshots, and I don't know where the bulbs were located, but you can clearly see in certain angles. I'll show you this shot here from the movie, and you can clearly see there's bulbs protruding from the bottom of the weapons pod. But when you look at that lower section, a picture of the that front bottom portion of the weapons pod of the studio model, like this one here, I cannot tell where those bulbs are sticking out. I had thought from previous viewings that it looked like the red lighting was coming. It looks like red lights. It could be white lights. I don't know, but I'm going to use red because I kind of like the way that the red plays off with the blue that I've got coming from the warp crystal and from that vent behind the officer's lounge. So I'm gonna put red because I think it gives kind of a nice play off it versus just using a white. Plus, it looks red to me in a lot of the, if you take some screenshots and look at them of the movie, it looks red on the hull where you see that light shining on the hull in certain scenes. So, again, I could be wrong, but I'm going to go with a red light. But I had always thought that the red light was coming from behind those blue vents that you see on the underside. But the problem with that is, like I said, in that other shot, the screenshot of the movie, you can clearly see there's bulbs that stick out from the bottom of the hull there somewhere. But I cannot tell where they protrude from. So I'm just going with my original idea, which was to light these vents. And I've already made the 3D part for it, so that's what I'm going to do. I don't know where the actual lights are. Again, I've looked at several different pictures and several different angles of that weapons pod from the studio model, and I cannot see on any of the pictures I've got. I've gone through them and looked, and I cannot see, even from some of these pictures where you can see it from the front angle, I don't see where there's any bulbs protruding from the bottom of the studio model weapons pod. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if maybe that picture is from a separate model that was possibly built for when it was getting when the Reliant was getting attacked and blown up. I don't know if the close-up pictures of that is a different weapons pod that was made for close-up shots or what. But even in the shots of the studio model, I don't really have any of that. Well, here's another shot. This one here from the front angle. Like I said, this could be a separate model from the studio model itself. This could be one of the ones where they blew up portions of the ship. And as a matter of fact, looking at the back side of that, it looks like that's possible. So maybe that's why I don't see any bulbs sticking out from the bottom of that. But when I've looked at pictures of the studio model itself, I just cannot find where those bulbs stuck out from the bottom of the weapons pod. So, like I said, I've already made the parts for it. I'm just going to go with backlighting those vents and call it good. At least I do have some lighting coming from there. If anybody has any shots that they come across where it clearly shows where those bulbs are located on the lower side of the weapons pod, please let me know. Forward them to me. We had a bunch of previously unseen shots, at least by me and by a lot of other people, that came out after the last video, where people were finding a cornucopia of shots of the model that apparently were taken by Heritage Auctions. So they were actually slides from the Greg Jean auction that Greg Jean had in his possession, slides where I guess he or somebody took pictures, very good close-up pictures of areas of the model that I had never seen before. So we had a bunch of those that were coming out. And thank you to everybody that participated in getting those out. But like I said, I can't tell where those bulbs are at, so I'm just going to go with my original idea, which is to backlight these lenses and call it good. So, but anyway, go ahead and wrap this out. I just got to finish putting these parts on, and then this upper roll bar will be ready to go. Excuse me. But anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this up, and we'll come back and take a look at getting those nacelles done on the next episode. So keep an eye out for that. But again, thank you everybody for your feedback. Thank you for watching. If you haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It costs you nothing, but it helps me out tremendously. It also looks good to my sponsors when I get a lot more subscribers. So please consider hitting that, helping me out. And we'll keep going with this build. But again, shout out to my sponsors: Paul over at Paragrafix, Gus over at GCals, Cass over at Lake Monster Details, and Gary over at Mass Design. Again, thank you to my sponsors. Their links are always in the notes below this video, so please give them a visit, show them some love, buy some stuff from them, let them know I sent you. But anyway, thank you again, everybody, for watching. Till next time, keep modeling.